Hi, it's Katrina and I'm here today to do the Harry Potter book tag. I've been looking around and I cannot find the original person who made this tag. If I find them, I'll link it. It'll be the top link in the description box. Harry Potter has been such a big part of my life. I grew up with the books. I remember the first time hearing the story and just being completely gobsmacked. I remember, I think you're like an OG Harry Potter fan if you remember before anyone knew whether it was Hermione or Hermione, because my dad read the first first 4 books aloud to me, and I think for at least a book and a half we were saying Hermione because it just hadn't quite blown up yet. It was really popular. It was the top of every bestseller list, but it didn't have the like international kind of frenzy that it does still to this day. And I remember, I think we saw an interview of J.K. Rowling on TV saying it was Hermione, and we were all like, oh no, totally blew our minds. Harry Potter, I think, is the reason why you've probably seen before, I have quite a big scar on my forehead. I got this when I was 5, and I remember at the time I thought it was quite cool, and the reason I've never ever been self-conscious of this like giant scar on my head, really, it's, you know, it's the entire length of my forehead. I've never been self-conscious about it is because I always just thought it was so cool because Harry Potter had a scar on his head. Like, it was only ever a positive thing to me throughout childhood. Like, people would say to me like, oh, you look like Harry Potter, and I was like, yay, can I be Hermione? Because I had really frizzy hair. And so Harry Potter in a lot of different ways has really influenced my life. And I'm not saying without Harry Potter I would be like massively ashamed of my appearance, but it's definitely a huge part of why I always thought that this was a pretty cool thing to have in your head. Like, everyone should have a scar on their forehead. Me and Harry do, so. Anyway, into the questions. Anyway, I digress, into the questions. First question is favourite book. Now I think that maybe 5 or 6 is probably my favourite books. I quite like the bigger books, the chunkier books. That's sort of where my reading tastes go generally anyway. I prefer larger novels, and though the first few books are great, I don't think they have as much weight or like emotion behind them as the later books do, which is funny because at the time I just did not get the 5th book. When it first came out, I was like, why are we just dragging on, and Harry needs to shut up and get on with it. I was just not really a fan, and I think that's so interesting because even though it's been more than 10 years since easily more than 10 years, but maybe more than 15 years since I first read Harry Potter or heard of Harry Potter, my attitude towards it is still changing. I'm still getting more from the books and the movies and the franchise. That's one of the big parts of Harry Potter and why it's so amazing, that probably in 10 years time again, my favourite book will be a different answer completely. Question 2 is your favourite movie. Half-Blood Prince is definitely my favourite movie. The latter 4 movies that were directed by David Yates are my favourite. He's my favourite Harry Potter director. I think he got my vision of Harry Potter and Hogwarts exactly how I would think it would be. And I think that Half-Blood Prince has the best mix of just fun but also the drama. There's so much comedy. We get to see what it would really be like when there was, you know, this castle full of teenagers with magic. Just obviously there's going to be running around wild. There's love potions, there's Weasley Wizard Wazes, they've got the radio on, and that sort of fun things. Ron and Lavender, which I just think is hilarious. Lavender, I don't know the name of the actress that plays Lavender Brown, but I think she's one of the best actresses in the Harry Potter movies, and I just love that movie. It's easily my favourite Harry Potter movie. The next question is least favourite book and movie. I don't have a least favourite book, maybe the second one. I really like all of them and there's some I just love, so I don't have a least favourite. My least favourite movie is definitely Prisoner of Azkaban. I think that the tone is completely different from the rest of the films. It butchers the plot. Prisoner of Azkaban is definitely the Marmite of the Harry Potter movie franchise. Some people just absolutely love it, but I remember even the first time I saw it sitting in the movie theatre and being like, oh, what is this? And I think that it's such a stark jump between the second and the third movie that I know it's a different director, but I feel like they could have taken into account the fact that they are a series, and to have some kind of blend in tone would have been great. I don't know, I'm not a fan of the third movie. Don't get me wrong, if it's on TV I'll watch it, but it's my least favourite. The next question is any moments that made you cry. I'm not really someone that cries at books. I don't think, none of the deaths I cried at. I didn't cry with Hedwig or Dumbledore. I was sad, or Dobby. I was definitely sad, don't get me wrong, but I'm not one to like cry. Now I think that now I've sort of accepted those deaths, like they don't make me that sad. Now the things that make me really sad are like the emotional struggles that all the characters go through. So when when Sirius has just died and Harry is back in Dumbledore's office and he's just trashing the place because he's just so frustrated and he's so angry, that's when I really get emotional, because I just understand, I have so much empathy for him in that moment, and just like everything is falling apart around him. His rants in the 5th book, which I thought were so tiresome at the time, I'm just like, I just get why he would be so frustrated. He's gone through so much and he's just feeling abandoned. Again, in Order of the Phoenix, when Molly is with the Boggart and that's really upsetting. I think in that moment you see how the impending war and Voldemort is affecting everyone in the wizarding world. It's not just our trio, it's not just Hogwarts, it's, you know, parents and families, everyone is being affected by it. I also get emotional at moments like when Luna's talking about how, you know, this is what it's like to have friends and stuff. It's things like that now that get me really emotional more than any of the deaths. Question number 5 is, if you could hook up with any character, who would it be? Honestly, I never thought about it at the time. The first time through I read them, was not on my mind, and now I'm considerably older than most of the cast. I am 23, so it would be a little odd if I was to go out with any of them, even if it was in the 7th book and they were like 17. So maybe Sirius? But I always think that him and Lupin are the best couple. That's, I definitely ship Wolfstar, so I wouldn't want to break that up. Honestly, maybe Charlie Weasley? I don't know, maybe Crumb? I don't know. Question number 6 is favourite character. I really like a lot of the characters. I really like mostly the female characters. I love Ginny. I like book Ginny so much. Movie Ginny is such a wet blanket, not a fan, but book Ginny, who's super powerful. She's maybe not as smart as Hermione, but she's a lot of power. You know, she goes in your mind from being this defenseless little sister of Ron to being with them later on, fighting alongside them and bogey hexing people left and right. She's the one that first kisses Harry. She ends up being a total badass on the Quidditch team. She goes through such a transformation. Love book Ginny. I really like Hermione. Do you know, she's the mascot for bookish weirdo girls everywhere. Like I said earlier, I was constantly called Hermione when I was little, mostly because of my bushy hair. I've discovered products since, so things are going better in that direction, but I still identify a lot with Hermione. She takes no prisoners, she's no nonsense, the way she rails against the world with SPEW, and she's got so much fire in her. Again, that's just what I like the fiery kind of women. I think that Dumbledore is such an interesting character. I don't necessarily even like Dumbledore, but thinking about him, he's really interesting. I also think that Malfoy is a really interesting character. He's one of my favourite characters. I don't necessarily like him, but the way that he's sort of on the wrong side, but it's all circumstantial, and you know, if he'd been a little stronger or been born into a different family or had different friends, you don't know, like things could have been so different. I love Draco in the 6th Harry Potter movie. I love the way it was portrayed in that, his struggle. Another favourite character. The next question is, what would your Patronus be? I've never really thought about it that much before. I did the online quiz thing and that said it would be a cat, and I don't know, maybe. I'm generally more of a dog person. I think I could be accurate because I feel like cats are generally, they're quite easygoing and laid back, which is me. They can be really, really focused on a task and go for what they want. I guess for cats that's like birds and stuff, but you might have things like careers and what have you. So maybe dogs are my favourite animal, and if that's got any bearing on it, then a retriever or something would be great. The next question is, what would you choose from the Deathly Hallows? I think you're supposed to pick the cloak, but basically, I would pick the wand if it meant that a muggle like me could have magical powers. Otherwise, yeah, probably the cloak. The stone, we're basically convinced by the tale, by the original tale, isn't particularly helpful, and I feel like the wand would be fine as long as you just kept it kind of quiet, and they don't seem to look into it that much about like where you've come from and stuff in a post-Voldemort society, so I feel like a wand could be a safe bet for just kind of sliding into the wizarding world. I think that's what I would go for. Otherwise, cloak. The next question is, what's your house? And I have got to say, it is Ravenclaw. I've always felt like I would be a Ravenclaw. When I was quite young, I wanted to be Gryffindor, but then I think truly I am a Ravenclaw, and you just sort of want to be, if you've not really thought about it, you want to be a Gryffindor because that's what Harry and the gang are, especially in the first few books when the other houses aren't explored that much at all. But sort of bookishness and learning are definitely quite prominent personality traits of mine, but I definitely think I've got a touch of the Hufflepuffs in there, I'd like to think. Old, reliable, friendly, but I do identify quite strongly with Ravenclaw House. And yes, I do wear this out and about, I do. The next question is, if you could meet a member of the cast, who would it be? Probably Emma Watson. She's so interesting and I feel like you could really have a lot of cool conversation with her. But I'd also love to meet Maggie Smith. I love Downton Abbey. I love The Prime of Mystery and Brody. She's been in a lot of just amazing things and talking to her would be really cool. Rupert Grint seems like he's a bit of an odd person, so he would be cool to meet. I think in an ice cream van, and I really like driving lessons that he's in. Maybe Bonnie Wright. I actually don't really like her in the movies. I don't think she's a great actress, but her activism and stuff is really inspiring. So yeah, either Emma Watson, Maggie Smith, or Bonnie Wright. The next question is, have you ever played a Harry Potter video game? Have I ever? I remember spending hours and hours. I'm gonna age myself now. I remember being timed by my dad. There was this old Harry Potter website, and it was before the movies came out. There was this website, it was like harrypotter.com or something like that. And I was only allowed to play an hour of it at a time, and then we had to turn it off for half an hour because we might need to get a phone call, and this was dial-up, so you couldn't get a phone call while you're on the internet. And I remember phoning my friend on the landline to tell her the website, like, and spelling it out over the phone because this was before like I had an email address or I couldn't have texted or anything. I had to phone her, and that was my first introduction to the Harry Potter video games. I distinctly remember a hippogriff game on that. There was potions, that kind of thing. So like I say, this was before the movies even came out. And then as the movies were coming out, EA put out all those PC games, and I played all of them. I played all of them. Multiple times over, and I loved them. I've also played Lego Harry Potter on the Xbox 360 a good few times, and that's a lot of fun as well. But the PC games, they will always be like my favourite. The next question is, if you were on the Quidditch team, what position would you be? And I'd say probably chaser or something. I don't know. I'd say probably not keeper, definitely not beater, because like bat sports are really not my thing. It was alright at hockey, but tennis and things where you had to get a ball in the air like in a 3D, like three-dimensional space. No, I was never going to be a good beater. So, and I don't know, seeker seems kind of lonely and boring. I don't know, probably chaser. The penultimate question is, were you happy with the ending? And I'm going to say I really like the ending, but the 19 years later bit was a bit okay for me. I continue to think that Albus Severus Potter is, one, a ridiculous name and an insult to all the other male role models and people who helped raise Harry, who are much better to him than both Dumbledore and Snape. I hate Snape. That's a whole other topic of another time, but Snape. It's sort of odd that everyone seemed to sort of end up with each other, but I guess if there's only one magical school and like the magical community is actually really narrow, probably would end up together. I'm not overly fussed about 19 years later. I'm not going to talk about the cursed child because I don't even know why I still own this piece of trash, but because that does not count for me. But I think that, you know, the right amount of people died. It would have been too harrowing, I think, if anyone, like, of the trio or anyone had died. It was sort of fitting, though, the way that Tonks and Lupin died, and Teddy is sort of the new Harry, but being brought up by the loving family, and they're sort of correcting those mistakes they made with Harry, being raised lovingly, which is so sweet. I really liked in the 7th book how all the little loose strings were tied up. So many things, questions you didn't even remember that you wanted answered were, like why the Bloody Baron had blood on him and stuff like that. I loved that that was wrapped up. I remember at the time being like, oh, I forgot that, I always wondered that, and there you go. So yeah, I really liked the 7th book. Not a huge fan of 19 Years Later. I love the way it was filmed in the movies though, where Ron's got that like pot belly and everything. That was funny. But yeah, overall a fan of the ending. And the last question is, what does Harry Potter mean to you? I think I've already answered this sort of throughout this chag. A lot. A huge part of my childhood that's also continued on into my adulthood. I've definitely, I mean, go through phases where it's not the forefront of your mind and everything. It's always been one of my favourites. I think it'll always be one of my favourites. I think it's so nice to have something, nice isn't the word for it, but I love that there's something in the world. My whole family will sit and watch a Harry Potter film together. I've made friends through Harry Potter, and it's definitely something even now that my friends, we're all in our early 20s and we still talk about it. And I distinctly remember the summer 2016, we were all in Ibiza and we were having a party when we were in Ibiza, and it was probably about 2 in the morning, and me and a couple of my friends having this really intense conversation of just about how amazing it was and how we really wanted a Marauders series, or even a standalone with the Marauders. You know, it's just something that I am really passionate about. I'm unapologetically passionate about. I cannot imagine a version of myself without Harry Potter. I cannot imagine a future version of myself where I don't still have all these editions of it on my shelves and I'm not just constantly rereading the books. I've not managed to find a time in here to actually bring up this, but I love the Harry Potter audiobooks. Stephen Fry reading the Harry Potter audiobooks, huge part of my life, huge part of my childhood. I used to listen to them before I went to sleep. Years and years and years and years, like 10 years more, I would listen to them every night before I went to sleep. Maybe some other books as well mixed in there, but I'd always just go back to Harry Potter. I have them on Audible now. Actually, I've never listened to the American version of the Harry Potter audiobooks. Maybe they're great. They're just probably not as good as the Stephen Fry ones. Let me know any of your answers to the questions down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What does Harry Potter mean to you? I'll also put some people who I'm going to tag in the description as well. So that was the Harry Potter book tag / gush. Thanks for watching. I post videos twice a week. You can also follow me on Instagram, Goodreads and Twitter, all of which are linked below. Thanks for watching. Bye.